I guess I wouldn't call it the fondest memory, but one of the memories that I really have of Bridger Bowl was John Kutzman and Bill Sicona and I were going to try to find a high traverse going into the North Bowl from the top of the old Palma that went up on the upper hill. And we traversed across above the cliffs instead of below the cliffs. And I can't say exactly where, but it was probably about 100 feet below the current ski patrol base terminal building for the patrol lift. I started out first across that little steep face. I don't know why we weren't 100 feet higher, but I started across there and it broke loose. Big slab avalanche, and I went from there down to the bottom of the North Bowl, right over the cliff. Fortunately, the road wasn't there. I had an avalanche cord on, and it was on top of the snow, and it stopped. And I had my ski poles, the straps wrapped around the handle of the pole, so I didn't have them on my wrist, and I just dropped those. They're Echo poles, and they're up there someplace, probably still. I remember when I went off the cliff, I could tell I was going off the cliff because I was free falling. And I landed on my feet down where the road is now. I felt that, but I landed on my back again and went off that little cliff right below that. There's a bunch of little trees, and there still are some there. And I went through those trees. Hit one of them hit me in the face, and I got a little cut on my chin. I had on a pair of dark glasses. I wound up down at the bottom, stopped. One of the bear trap skis was turned 180 degrees sideways, but I didn't really get hurt. Maybe it happened kind of slowly, I'm not sure. Kutzman and Sicona were still standing up there, and I won't repeat exactly what I said, but I could hear Kutzman yelling, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" And I yelled back, "That was the fastest ride I've ever had out from Bridger Bowl." Not those exact words, but close to it. When I was working for the Forest Service, before we put it in 75mm guns, we'd had a big snowstorm, and the North Bowl had slid on its own, but we didn't go up and knock the snow down or the cornice off in the Avalanche Gulch. In those days, we'd hike to the ridge on Friday and would knock the cornices off, and hopefully that would cause a slide. And we did that every Friday because it was too much work to hike up there all the time. Then we'd open up the bowls on Saturday and Sunday. And we hiked to the ridge. There was two other people with me. And used to be a big cornice form up there. They knock it down every day now, so it doesn't build like it used to. But they tied a rope around my waist, and I went out on the cornice, and I kind of went out on my hands and knees because I knew it would be pretty fragile at that point. And I got out there, and it fractured right between both my hands and my knees. And I didn't fall off it, but the guy that had the rope around me delayed, pulled it back, snugged up, and I actually sat on that, like I'm sitting here right now looking down. And and the whole thing went, the whole upper Avalanche Gulch, and I don't know how deep it was, but the cornice was the size of a boxcar. And I could see it, the rope line. We had a rope line on the north side of the Avalanche Gulch down there, and all these people were lined up, to watch the slide. And this thing went over the cliffs on the upper part of the hill, and the snow went up in the air a quarter of a mile, and all those guys just disappeared behind all this snow. And then I saw it go across the bottom of the South Bowl, and it actually stopped over underneath where the Pierre's Knob lift is now. That's where the airborne snow stopped, not the bulk of the slide. But when the air kind of settled down a little bit, the snow did, I could see all these people down there, and there was people, instead of it just an even line, you can imagine lined up, people were laying in the snow, and there was one guy, maybe he had cross-country skis on, but you've seen the cartoons of the guy running with a pair of alpine skis. He was running away from But I thought I'd probably killed 50 people, but this slide went right by 30 or 40 feet in front of him, probably going 220 miles an hour, a quarter mile high, and it was a real education.
I remember that slide. I was standing over there.
You were
watching it. And I don't remember if I was trying to run with my skis and long clothes on.
That was you.
But I remember the slide. Yeah.
It was a big one.
It was.
One of the biggest ones I think that ever went down the South Bowl.
Yeah, John Kutzman and Bill Sicona and I blew that cornice off one day up there too, and started one similar to that, but fortunately it was middle of the week, there was no one here. And it did about the same thing. It went clear down to the bottom about where the Pierre's Knob lift is now. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a pretty good avalanche story. My father was interested in avalanches, but didn't really delve into it as a geologist until this particular incident. He and a group were heading up for Saddle Peak. We always called it Bridger Peak then. I wasn't on that trip that particular day. I don't know why. I wish I had been, although it was pretty scary, memorable. I'm pretty sure that Roland Brenny, who was president of MSU, was there, and I'm sure that Dave Wessel, because Dave was always the mountain man, breaking trail, and a number of others. But this was before Pierre's ski lift. They would head up to Pierre's, which we did all the time as a family, but then they'd head off diagonally across that huge bowl and up towards the peak. And they didn't feel like anything was terribly wrong. Got there, went on up to the peak. I remember my dad said he kind of looked at that big bowl, but as far as he was concerned, it was okay. Turned around, came down, and the whole thing had slid so deep that they had to take off their skis to walk across that bowl and get to the other side. And of course they must have missed it by, who knows, minutes, half hour. And he thought, here I was with all these people, you know, putting them that close at risk. I really should know a little bit more about what we're doing. So he started work at that point on the resistograph. My brother and I irreverently call it his science fair project because he was always making us do science fair projects. But it really amounted to a broom pole that he would put down into the ground, and then he worked out a string with a little piece of graph paper. It had a wedge on it, so as you pulled it back out, you could tell what layers were firm and what were weak and how far down it was. I know that Gordon Williamson did an incredible engineering masterpiece to make it more sophisticated. But that really did help start a lot of the early avalanche research. He did it in combination with the Earth Sciences Department and the College of Engineering, and it was very exciting from then on out and still is.
Well, John Montagne, as a geologist, was interested in snow, and he got aware of avalanches as a ski patrolman and worked at MSU to develop a class that continues to this day on snow avalanche theory and practice. And he also became aware of snow avalanches as a chance to bring science into practice in a way so that the International Association that he helped design and start as a good example of taking science from the laboratory out onto the ski fields and being able to make decisions about managing people and snow. And it remains as an example of bringing together the academic approach with what someone needs who, as Charles Bradley was leading a group of people across the ridge, realized the importance of decision making. And so, like a lot of other university people, John Montagne devoted most of his spare time to that, so that our weekends were often up here erecting devices on the ridge to see about controlling the wind to control cornices and working with the resistograph idea and digging snow pits. And so, like for all of us, it's a way of life piece that's a wonderful blend of study and practice.